Senator Roberts has some questions for you.
Thank you. Thank you for appearing today. The so-called trusted digital identity entails finding all Commonwealth government records for every adult Australian, creating a digital identity in each person's name, and then adding that data into their digital identity. In other words, this is a giant data matching exercise. Is that correct?
No, Senator, that's not correct.
Could you explain why?
So
What it is?
Yes, so the digital identity is a mechanism for citizens through their own choice to establish a trusted and secure mechanism to engage with government services. The information that's stored inside of the digital identity is entirely up to the discretion of the citizen to put it in, and it is not used for any other purpose than for proofing the identity of the citizen so they can use services.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, you would have to be able to connect the government databases, or at least connect the government databases to an individual's record, if they wanted to.
So if a citizen chooses to, and there is different levels of proofing within the digital identity system. Lower level of proofing requires less documentation, but significant services that have got a high risk or a high value have a higher level of proofing. In those circumstances, we match to existing government services, but through a consent basis.
Okay. How many digital identities do you expect to create? Would it be one for every Australian?
So currently, Senator, there is 7.9 million digital identities that have been created. Mm-hmm. So it's entirely voluntary, so it does not necessitate one-to-one in that space.
So how many do you think you will create? Because as I understand it, the trusted digital identity is pretty significant in the government's policy. They have shown us legislation, and it would seem to be fairly comprehensive. How many digital identities would you anticipate would be created?
So that is a matter of choice for citizens, Senator. So the purpose of the identity is to make safe, secure and simple services. So as new services are created by the government that require identity, then people can make choices as to how they do it. There is always alternatives for access to government services outside of digital identity, so that people that choose not to are not disadvantaged.
Right, so how many digital identities do you think will be created ultimately? Do you expect? I mean, you're doing your planning, I take it.
So we are scaled for full enrolment. I might just get a specific one to Julie Cook.
Yeah, Julie Cook, Branch Manager for Digital Identity. As Chris has mentioned, there's no requirement for people to create or use a digital identity, and we believe that the adoption rate for digital identities to be created and used will be determined by the services that people are choosing to access.
Okay. You're starting a project then with no understanding of how big this is going to be, or potentially be?
No, we model that based on the services that are onboarding, and we can take, I guess, a question off on notice on the services that we've got onboarding over the next, up until the end of this calendar year.
That would be handy. And what about for the next 5 years?
So we haven't modelled the services. The demand is based purely on the services that are onboarding and people's desire to choose a digital identity process to help them access those services.
And Senator, importantly, digital identity is not on a per service basis. When you create a digital identity, is used for many services, and that increases the simplicity by which people can access those services in a way that's trusted and secure.
I understand that, but I would think that the Digital Transformation Agency, which started in 2016 with a mission, and this is quoting you, to transform services to be simple, clear and fast. The very first step in that process would be, I would have thought, to be a stock table of what systems are out there so an accurate job scope could be formed.
Senator, if I'm understanding the question correctly, if you're trying to get the volume of the number of citizens that would enrol, it'll be adult citizens within the Commonwealth can use it for access to government services. We're also very keen to make sure that it's clear that there is not one and only one digital identity that's available for the system. So within the identity framework that we've proposed, there can be multiple identities that can be provided. The government digital identity, the MyGov ID, currently has 7.9 million. It has been growing steadily since it came into effect, with a significant uptick since we introduced the higher proofing levels for some services, such as tax file numbers and CRNs.
So that makes sense, but I still can't understand how the project could be started, and it's not just in this country, it's in many countries, the digital transformation platform or project, how it can be started without an understanding of the scope. Because how can you then ask the government for a budget? How can you justify the expenditure of money? How can you justify how many billions will be devoted to this?
So, Senator, again, the words that you used were simple, clear and fast access to government services in a federated digital identity system. So there are, across local, state and federal government and the private sector, hundreds, if not thousands of services that could be made digital if there was the appropriate identity proofing to allow access to those digital services. We are provisioning a framework and a method to give access to those services. The rate of which the services come on is a matter for some other agencies, and as well as state and local governments and the private sector.
So what's the scope? How do you know how much money will be spent now, how much money will be spent in the future, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Seems like it's just hit and miss.
I might pass to Julie just after a couple of comments again. So we will respond to the demand in the system, and we've built the Trusted Digital Identity framework and the system to scale significantly in use. So as the demand increases, so will the capability of the system. As more services come online, it will create an environment where people are expecting and requesting more digital services to come online for the convenience of those services and the ease of access. The idea with the Trusted Digital Identity framework is we've got not just one identity provider that can do it, but many in the system, and in fact many actual other providers both in the private sector and the public sector that can actually make use of a highly secure, accredited environment for the people outside of the system, and one that's actually at a certain point in the future will be covered under legislation.
So correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like either this is an open check approach or an ambush approach. We need this money suddenly. So I can't understand how work can start on this without some scoping or some understanding of the size of the project.
So one more comment, then I will hand to Julie. As you noted, digital identity is being used broadly across the planet, very much a focus of governments.
Starting to come in, thanks to the World Economic Forum, yes.
So again, there is differing levels of maturity across the planet in that space. The use of digital identity provides a way of creating an assured framework for people to get access to those services, and I will hand across to Julie now.
Just add to Chris's point that I guess the origin of the Digital Identity Program was in response to the Financial Services Inquiry in 2014 and the government response to that in 2015 to address some of the fragmentation of how identity verification is undertaken across the digital economy. One of the ways that government has responded to that is the building of the digital identity system run by the Commonwealth, which, as Chris has mentioned, has got 7.9 million people that have created a MyGov ID at this point in time. We've also accrediting private sector entities as well who are looking at setting up their own digital identity services under the Trusted Digital Identity framework to ensure that those systems are built to the same rules and regulations. So I guess, as Chris has mentioned, as more services come onto our system, we expect that that more and more people will want to create and use a digital identity.
Just going back a minute, I was at the Australian Banking Association conference a few weeks ago. And I may be wrong in this, but it seemed like every single speaker spoke about the need for a digital identity. And we're very much talking it up. So if that's the case, why isn't there some kind of scope around this? It still seems to be we'll go along until people want it.
Senator,
It seems to be an awfully big commitment ahead.
for a very large problem. As you noted, it's not just government services that are looking for that. Financial services industries, and it is to address the secure and simple access. So the increase of online fraud, online crime is skyrocketing, as you would see from things like the ACSC reports, and digital identity is a very important component in the framework of delivering services that are trusted and secure. And with the Trusted Digital Identity Framework, we've gone further and we've put in place an accreditation and a regulation environment that ensures the privacy of the individuals are maintained, that there is a recompense if there is any failures within the systems that support the recovery of the identities that are sitting in there, to make sure that we're able to support trust and confidence in the government system. And the people that go through accreditation, as Julie said, they're held to a very high standard, and the standard, which I'll just pass to Julie, is being acknowledged and recognised as a leading framework within the whole planet.
Yep, not going to add. We unearthed a number of failures at last Senate estimates. My understanding is that, I agree with you, the incidence of digital fraud is skyrocketing. The biggest areas of concern seem to be government services in Silicon Valley, and so that doesn't give me much hope. And most of them are attributable to either human error or fraud. People are very, very skillful.
And Senator, yes, it goes to the nature of the reason why the digital identity is in place, to give people ongoing protections that when they're engaging with people that are accredited through our system or accredited through our framework or within our system, that there is an incredibly high standard that they need to work to.
So
Senator Roberts, we are overdue for lunch now, so if you can wrap up your questions as quickly as possible,
Can
please.
you show me a risk assessment for the trusted digital identity, please? Are you able to provide that?
I might just pass to Julie.
Security, we've done cyber security risk assessments. We can confirm whether that we can table those.
Okay. The last time the federal government had tried a simple data matching exercise, just two databases, Centrelink and taxation, we had a Royal Commission level stuff-up, robo-debt. Hundreds, if not thousands of lives were lost while nothing good came of it. With such high stakes, how could your department have not done a risk assessment comprehensively, not just in the narrow scope that you mentioned, Ms Cook, to make sure the same tragedy does not happen again?
Senator, over the life of the digital identity system, we've done a number of privacy impact assessments. We've consulted very broadly with stakeholder groups. We've worked very closely with the privacy commissioners. We've done all of the work that's necessary to look at the protections for citizens. We have certainly been conscious of the concerns around privacy and security of information, and they've been upmost in ours. The Trusted Digital Identity Framework has got trust principles underpinning it. It has a number of regulatory practices that we've put in place for certifications that say they have to have a high standard. And the intent of the digital identity is actually only for the proofing. It's not used for any other purposes. It's not used for one-to-many matching. It's not used to track people's movements. It is simply a mechanism to support secure and safe and convenient access to services through a proven identity.
And yet, last question, Chair.
Thank you, Senator
This is
Roberts.
not just Australia, because you have on your website, you have, apart from my scratchings on it, a digital identity working group that goes around the world. It's got Australia, Canada, Finland, Israel, Netherlands, New Zealand, I think, another country's flag I don't recognise, and Britain. So the Digital Identity Working Group is exploring ways to, quote, enable mutual recognition and or interoperability around the world, globally, meaning an Australian digital identity will follow them around the world wherever they go. So there won't be any escape from the trusted digital identity globally, will there?
Senator, I might pass to Julie for this.
So I chair that working group. The intention is to understand what is happening internationally in the digital identity space, and where there are potential opportunities to make the systems interoperable to support ease of transactions internationally. We've started looking at opportunities through that group. There's been that's not a decision-making group. It's an information sharing group.
Okay, thank